Like many suburbs, Seven Hills is facing some financial troubles. We know this, and Mayor Richard Delaquila said with the loss of the property tax increase, Seven Hills will have to make some very difficult financial decisions. So what cuts need to be made? What can be cut? Councilman Fraundorf, you can go ahead.
Well, you know, as I said just a moment ago, I think that, you know, we have an $8 million operating fund, and every department has to look where they can make cuts. And I would be the first to say, we talk about sharing services. You know, we need to look at things like, do we need a fully staffed building department when we're 95% built out? Perhaps, you know, there we can share with a Broadview Heights or an Independence. Do we need, you know, 2 secretaries, full-time secretaries in that department? We probably should look at the service department and see, you know, is that functioning, you know, optimally, or can we make adjustments to get, you know, more out of that department? And I think that goes for every department within Seven Hills. So yeah, there's certainly an opportunity to save some monies.
Great. Mr. Wallace?
Well, I think one of the things you don't want to cut is our safety services. We're one of the top safest cities in the country, and our residents are very proud of that, and I like raising my family in a safe city. And I don't know that there are really that many other places that we can make cuts. What I think we can do is look at other potentially grant opportunities, look to other agencies to infiltrate our city with more money.
All right. Mr. Kukral?
Yeah, you know, I recently met a woman in the city who all she does for a living is find and apply and write grants. And she lives in our city. I met her going door to door. This is the type of person that we need to have on staff or part-time working to find new revenue for the city. Now also, residents should know this. I think the number is about 80% of our city's budget goes to payroll for employees. We have something like 250 employees. People don't realize how many employees we have. So is there cuts there? Maybe, right? But of course nobody wants to cut service team, nobody wants to cut police. Who wants it? You're right, it's the safest city in Northeast Ohio. We don't want to do that. Let's find ways to bring in new revenue by finding the people who can do the right things and get some economic development happening in the city.
Great. Councilman Snitzky?
Well, yeah, I'll take a 2-track approach on this. We definitely need the economic development. I mean, like I said, we need to enhance the ability to generate revenue at Rockside Road. That needs to happen. As far as cutting personnel, we've got 16 police full-time, 13 service people full-time, down from 21. 2 full-timers in the rec center. We have 3 full-time people in the building department. We tried to outsource the building department. Nobody wanted it. Brooklyn Heights didn't want it. Broadview Heights didn't want it. They didn't want it. They didn't want to split that outsource. It's going to be very difficult. Really, the only place we can cut at this stage of the game is probably the police force. And that's just such a bad thing because we have to lay off all of the full-timers before we cut all of the part-timers before we cut 1 full-time policeman. We have to come up with innovative ways of generating revenue one way or the other. There's very few, if any, places left to cut, unfortunately. I mean, we've dropped our operating budget. You know, we're down to $8.5 million from $10.5 million. I mean, it's a 15% reduction. There's very little places left to cut.
All right, thank you. Mr. Pietra?
This problem has been caused over the past 10, 12 years when they decided to put in full-time engineering, building, and senior citizens. With the seniors, we had a senior citizen that we paid $4,000 a year, but they've decided to make that a full-time position. In the building department, I could see us having a full-time building department if the Rockside Terrace did happen, but it didn't. I think they put the cart before the horse. Same thing with the engineering. We've been paying for this over the years. Now it's time that we have to make adjustments to go to a part-time building because we're 90%. Engineering, I believe, and it's outsourced now, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, they finally did that after years. So I do believe there's places to cut.
Great, thank you. Mr. Frank?
I do agree with Mr. Petrov to a certain degree. I think that several of the problems that Seven Hills is experiencing now were the result of past administrations. However, at this point in time, our current administration has already done excessive and severe cuts. I'm not saying that there's not further things that could be cut. What I am saying is that a regular review on a bi-monthly basis should be undertaken so that Seven Hills and the administration actually knows what the excesses are, what the needs are, and what can be cut. However, several things have already been cut, and I would never, ever suggest that we should give less services to our residents. Our residents deserve services. As such, we not only need to look at the cuts, but we need to look at ways of bringing revenue in from grant writing, from county sources, from government sources, from business development, from all these natures. And that's something that needs to be done. It needs to be done now. And the county would be extremely helpful from my research in doing so. In fact, several county grant programs and
Sorry to cut you off, Mr. Frank. Sorry about that.
No
All right,
problem.
so candidates, any follow-up? We'll start with you. Councilman Fraundorf, go ahead.
Thank you. I would have to, I agree with Frank. I'm hard pressed to believe that there aren't further cuts that can be made. We talked, Mr. Snitzky talked about, we've cut our budget from 10 million down to 8 million, 8 million 5. Well, that's fine, but that tells you how bloated it was to begin with. And I truly believe that, there are positions within our community, within our administration that we really don't need. Now, to your point, Mr. Wallace, talking about the safety forces, of course not. No one wants to compromise the safety of the community. So, the police is basically hands-off. I think we would all agree with that. But I think there are other areas that, we really need to take a hard look at. I think that what Mr. Kukral said about grant writing is pertinent. We can go after grant money, but it's not like we haven't been doing that already. So, and I'll end it with that.
Great. All right, Mr. Kukral, we'll let you go next.
I mean, look, if you went into credit card debt, the first thing a debt consolidation company would tell you is stop spending money, right? And that's exactly where we are in the city right now, is we are spending way more money than we bring in. And that's the first step in fixing this problem. Now, if I was on council, I would have voted no to the mayor's budget that spends $700,000 more than it brings in. Mr. Traffus and Mr. Fraundorf voted no. I would have been a person who voted no to that as well. I will point this out. 26 other communities in Northeast Ohio, including the city of Cleveland, balanced their budgets this year. So there's no excuse that we cannot do it in Seven Hills, and that is the first step to fixing the problems.
Great, thank you. Mr. Frank, I know you had more to say. Would you like to go next?
No, I think everything's been addressed.
All right, Mr. Petro?
One other avenue we could check too is to combine services with other communities that some do. I know Mr. Snitzky talked about building that nobody wanted it, but I'm looking at something like rubbish. Maybe we can hook up with Parma. We have a contract coming up, I believe, next year. Next year. Yeah. Some sort of way to cut aid or cut costs that way to be more friendly to our neighbors, to besides economic development. But we still have to make up that $700,000 budget, that deficit. So I think we should expand.
All right, Mr. Wallace?
No, I'm good.
All right, Councilman Snitzky?
Well, a couple things. I'm all for regionalization on anything that we can regionalize on except our political identity. I don't think anybody in Seven Hills wants to give up our political identity. We've done a lot of regionalization. Broadview Heights has been doing our police dispatching for years. North Royalton is where we house our prisoners. We use their jail. Yeah, if we can get something with the garbage collection, great. But, I think that we have to look at this, the $700,000 thing that we keep kicking around. We did balance our budget. It's just that we decided to use the bond retirement fund for what it was designed for. We did have a balanced budget. The bond retirement fund is being used to pay down the debt that we've accrued mostly from the rec center. So, things are not bad. Could they be better? Sure. Are we going to have a problem 5, 6 years from now? Of course. Every city will.
All right, thank you, Councilman.